Gord's Poetry Show, number 31. Welcome. Last time we dipped into Andrew Motion's anthology, Here to Eternity. And I would like to continue. And not only would I like to continue, I will continue. Despite any opposition that may be coming from the cheap seats. That's it. Paul Celan, Corona. Autumn eats its leaf out of my hand. We are friends. From the nuts we shell time and we teach it to walk. Then time returns to its shell. In the mirror, it's Sunday. In dream there is room for sleeping. Our mouths speak the truth. My eye moves down to the sex of my loved one. We look at each other. We exchange dark words. We love each other like poppy and recollection. We sleep like wine in the conches, like the sea in the moon's blood ray. We stand by the window embracing, and people look up from the street. It is time they knew. It is time the stone made an effort to flower. Time unrest had a beating heart. It is time it were time. It is time. Translated from the German by Michael Hamburger. Joe Shapcott, Muse. When I kiss you in all the folding places of your body, you make that noise like a dog dreaming of the long run he makes in answer to some jolt to his hormones, running across landfills, running by tips and shorelines from the scent of too much, but still going with head up and snout in the air because he loves it all and has to get away. I have to kiss deeper and more slowly your neck, your inner arm, the neat creases under your toes, the shadow behind your knee, the white angles of your groin, until you fall quiet, because only then can I get the damned words to come into my mouth. Edgell, Rickword, Intimacy. Since I have seen you do those intimate things that other men but dream of, lull asleep the sinister dark forest of your hair, and tie the bows that stir on your calm breast, faintly as leaves that shudder in their sleep. Since I have seen your stocking swallow up, a swift black wind, the flame of your pale foot, and deemed your slender limbs so meshed in silk, sweet mermaid sisters drowned in their dark hair. I have not troubled over much with food, and wine has seemed like water from a well. Pavements are built of fire, grass of thin flames. All other girls grow dull as painted flowers, or flutter harmlessly like colored flies, whose wings are tangled in the net of leaves, spread by frail trees that grow behind the eyes. Robert Herrick, a voice from the past. Upon Julia's clothes. When as in silks my Julia goes, Then, methinks, how sweetly flows that liquefaction of her clothes. Next, when I cast mine eyes and see that brave vibration each way free, oh, how that glittering taketh me. Vasco Popa, the love of the quartz pebble. He fell for a beautiful, a rounded, blue-eyed, a frivolous endlessness. He is quite transformed into the white of her eye. Only she understands him, only her embrace has the shape of his desire, dumb and boundless. All her shadows he has captured in himself. He is blind in his love, and he sees no other beauty but her he loves, who will cost him his head. Translated from the Serbo-Croat by Anna Pennington. Nina Cassian, Face to Face. I waited for this moment when, face to face, we are traveling toward a destination which separates us, face to face, with our features violently reciprocated, with our hands exhausted by blood, not daring to kiss, with our clothes not daring to turn red, with our mouths deserted by that word that brings day and night into the world. So, here we are, face to face, becoming more and more estranged, alienating ourselves with our whole capacity of misunderstanding, in a true species adversity, so that when the drain jerks us into each other's arms, we have the revelation of death, as probably the mammoths had when they leapt into the next era. Translated from the Romanian by Brenda Walker and Andrea Delatante. Anne Bradstreet, to my dear and loving husband. If ever two were one, then surely we. If ever man were loved by wife, then thee. If ever wife was happy in a man, compare me with me, ye women, if you can. I prize thy love more than whole mines of gold, or all the riches that the earth doth hold. My love is such that rivers cannot quench, nor aught but love from thee give recompense. Thy love is such I can no way repay. The heavens reward thee manifold, I pray. Then while we love, in love let's so persevere, that, when we live no more, we may live ever. I thought I had some tea around here. Well, there it is. It's morning, can you tell? William Shakespeare. Now there's a name. Unforgettable. Like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore, so do our minutes hasten to their end, each changing place with that which goes before. In sequent toil all forwards do contend. Nativity, once in the main of light, crawls to maturity. wherewith being crowned, crooked ellipses against his glory flight, and time that gave doth now his gift confound. Time doth transfix the flourish set on youth, and delves the parallels in beauty's brow, feeds on the rarities of nature's truth, and nothing stands but for his scythe to mow. And yet to times in hope my verse shall stand, praising thy worth despite his cruel hand. Edward Dorn. Not a roommate of Shakespeare's by any means. Although I guess if we did that sort of parallel universe thing, they could actually be, sharing a study somewhere. And some of you sci-fi types, no doubt, will applaud that instant measure. Edward Dorn, song. This afternoon was unholy, the sky bright mixed with cloud wrath. I read Yeats, then black, and their land of heart's desire, where beauty has no ebb, decay no flood, but joy is wisdom, time an endless song. I kiss you, and the world begins to fade. I kiss you not, the world is not. I would not give my soul to you, yet the desire inside me burns. November. The 18th was the coldest this season, encumbered with routine errands, out past the factory, black sulphur, and in the dense checks of its burdensome smoke, the intense yellow tanks, hooded, there sat a smell of weak death, and we passed these days of our isolation in our rigidly assigned shelters, heads bent in occupation, a couple of pointless daydreamers, smiles lit and thrown into the breeze. How artful can love suffer in the cross streets of this town, marked simply by the clicking railroad and scratch of the janitor's broom? Indeed, Edwards, indeed. That's it for the anthology for this time. Sabra Loomis, her collection House Held Together by Winds. Isn't that the most charming title you ever heard in the last day or two? ESP. Her uncle was very clear. She had to stand in the other room while he guessed her thoughts, the numbers she was thinking. They were in a cavern, a canyon by the stairs. She didn't like the fact he could read her thoughts. Before the war, he was a mountain climber. She listened as new mountains were discovered and climbed. Nanda Devi, Annapurna, Everest. They drew close to the mountains in sleep, and a strange singing came from the high-up houses. The house itself was a landscape, messages carved in the corners. On this plateau, what were the signs of life? Herons and crows, magpies with black and white markings? She was his new experiment. Mountains piled up with energy in the layers, the brain as a new Himalaya. When news came from the front, when the snows melted, they took off the tough hide shoes, stood at the windows and listened. She started to guess what he might be thinking. Separation, a narrow rope bridge across a chasm. You went on your knees, if at all, he said, out over the brink. What markings were there in the cloud landscape? Who were the singers? Where was the precipice? Indeed, the precipice. I think I just fell over it. And we'll be dipping into this one again. Charming, charming book. Published around 2008, as far as I can see. Sabra Loomis, House Held Together by Winds. A few months ago, we dipped into Brian Culhane's The King's Question. Grey Wolf Press. Again, 2008. Well, well, well. There must be a small conspiracy going on here. 2008's got its helpers sneaking about. There's always conspiracies everywhere. And not all of them are done by the CIA, I might add. The Western intellectual tradition. Perhaps begin with Gilgamesh's better half, Enkidu, from whose nose did fall the worm of death, or that psalmist who saw Gilead in the love act, two sweating selves making the little death. But whatever you do, begin with the construct you. A tautology Descartes loved teasing to death. Perhaps start with the monumentality of fact, a famous thought, a first, not so unlike a last breath. A last breath? I guess we all get to have one, don't we? Wouldn't it be fun to have two? Paradigm. Cool pressure of prescience, the snow against the familiar gritty pavement of New York. A piano plays rapidly and in ignorance, accumulations deepening throughout the night. What solo casts its spell on the moon? Only scales, left hand after right, as steady as the snow, ascent and descent, the way lovers talk to themselves at night, higher, lower, always searching for the opposing touch, the steady snow, these lucent attitudes, crystallizations at some further remove. Thank you, Brian. McSweeney's. There's a name to conjure up all manner of trendiness. And guess what? They now have a poetry series. Indeed. 5 books in all, as far as I can tell. And I was going to read one of the poems from The Boss by Victoria Chang. I think my marker just fell out. Oh dear, maybe I'll have to read another one. A lot of poems in this book about the boss. There's all kinds of boss stuff in here. And there's quite a few poems reflecting on Edward Hopper's artwork. Quite a few. Almost too many to read, actually. I can't find the one I was going to read. Oh dear. I drive up hills. I drive up hills to see the tops of other people's heads. At the top, I can't read books at the top. I can't watch my own children at the top. I am dumb, I am numb at the top. But still I want to go to the top because that's where a boss sits. A boss has fits at the top, gives tips at the top. A boss gets into tip-top shape on the way up. yesterday. I met a boss who asked his people how they felt. Once I met a boss who knelt as he bussed tables, who helped his people without his arms on his hips. My father wanted me to be a boss who can fire up people, who can fire people. My father used to circle English words he didn't know with a red pen. Now his books drip red, now his books have locks. He has an aphasia workbook. He asks my 4-year-old to help when I ask him the name of his old boss. He says his own name. Yes, lots in this book about bosses and who wants to be boss and who could have been boss and, you know, the eternal nature of bosses. Wow, certainly bossed me up, that's for sure. Canadian poet Sandra Ridley has a new book from Toronto's notorious book thug. It's called The Counting House, and it has a bird perched in front of a house. Love it, a large house. A sparrow, maybe? I'm not sure. What do you think? Yeah, anyway, a dark bird. And challenging poetry it is too. Luxuria, the last in line. Last in line of the book, I mean, not last in line. If you can't lay your hands on, now, lay my hands on, then. Rain. Ground wet. If this is what it is like, quick pressed and released, unhoused up against a bit-lit moon, scent of, honeysuckled, damp, taste of, fingers to your mouth. Be afraid of and want not, a wish stone swallowed whole, perhaps and very likely there'll be pain. Under an ache, a broken rib, beaten deep into the midline, believe in what can be believed. Rain, grief, skin. Love, rain, heavy, love, heavy love, rain. Heavy love, rain. Heavy love, rain. It's actually quite sunny today, but it's supposed to rain tomorrow. But the weather forecast has been tragically mistaken this last few weeks. They forecast rain, we get a snowstorm. And I was the very victim of that very thing. Well, what next? An old favourite, perhaps. There's always old favourites around, you know, always. They never go very far away. You keep trying to push them away and go, we want new stuff, we want new stuff. But, you know, the old favourites, they keep coming back, they keep coming back. I'm, in fact, looking for an old favourite right now. And I know you probably find that hard to believe. But, ooh, there's one right there. That was just one. There's more than one. Oh, darn. Can I see them? Maybe not. Oh, there we go. Page 73. I hope you don't groan when I read this one. I really do think it's quite an eternal charmer. See if you can guess. The winter evening settles down with smell of steaks and passageways. 6 o'clock. The burnt-out ends of smoky days, and now a gusty shower wraps the grimy scraps of withered leaves about your feet, and newspapers from vacant lots. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and at the corner of the street a lonely cab horse steams and stamps. And then the lighting of the lamps. The morning comes to consciousness of faint, stale smells of beer from the sawdust-trampled street, with all its muddy feet that press to early coffee stands. With all the other masquerades that time resumes, one thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. You tossed a blanket from the bed. You lay upon your back and waited. You dozed and watched the night revealing the 1,000 sordid images of which your soul was constituted. They flickered against the ceiling. And when all the world came back and the light crept up between the shutters and you heard the sparrows in the gutters, you had such a vision of the street as the street hardly understands. Sitting along the bed's edge where you curled the papers from your hair or clasped the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands. His soul stretched tight across the skies that fade behind a city block, or trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock, and short square fingers stuffing pipes, and evening newspapers, and eyes assured of certain certainties. The conscience of a blackened street, impatient to assume the world. I am moved by fancies that are curled around these images and cling. The notion of some infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. Wipe your hand across your mouth and laugh. The worlds revolve like ancient women, gathering fuel in vacant lots. Thomas Stern's Preludes. And that didn't take you back to university. I don't know what will. Gord's Poetry Show. Another almost half an hour unwinding in delicate filigrees of language. May the metaphor be with you always amidst the changing shadows of the sunlit world.